The first thing Brooks noticed about his CEO was that she never smiled at anyone, the way she smiled at strangers. To investors, she was flawless. To reporters, she was elegant. To the employees of Vail and Mercer hotels, she was terrifying. But to the exhausted old janitor who accidentally dropped an entire tray of champagne glasses in the lobby that winter evening, Evelyn Carter had quietly knelt beside him in her $1,000 heels and whispered, "Are you hurt?" Daniel saw it happen from across the marble floor, and somehow that moment stayed with him longer than the sound of breaking glass, because people like Evelyn Carter weren't supposed to kneel for anyone. She was the youngest CEO in the company's history. Cold, brilliant, untouchable, the kind of woman whose silence could make senior executives sweat through their tailored suits. And Daniel? He was just a mid-level event coordinator, trying to survive another impossible holiday conference in Chicago, which was exactly why he nearly choked when his manager rushed toward him at midnight and said, "We've got a disaster." Daniel looked up from his laptop. "What happened?" "The snowstorm canceled half the bookings. Hotels over capacity. Flights are grounded. We ran out of rooms." Daniel blinked. "Okay." His manager looked deeply uncomfortable. "There's only one room left." Daniel frowned. "Then give it to one of the guests." His manager hesitated. "It already belongs to Ms. Carter." Silence. Daniel stared. "No. She approved it herself. That has to be a joke." "It's not?" 10 minutes later, Daniel stood outside the penthouse, sweet feeling like his entire career was seconds away from ending. He adjusted his tie for the 5th time before knocking. The door opened almost immediately. Evelyn Carter stood there in black silk slacks and a cream sweater, her dark hair loose around her shoulders for the first time Daniel had ever seen. Without the sharp business suit and icy posture, she looked human, still terrifying. Her gray eyes moved over him calmly. "You're late. It's been 30 seconds. And yet somehow still late." Daniel swallowed. "Ma'am, I can sleep in the lobby, really?" "You're not sleeping in the lobby during a blizzard." "I don't think HR would survive this arrangement. HR doesn't need to know." Then she walked away, leaving the door open behind her. Daniel stepped inside cautiously. The suite was enormous, all warm lighting and city views. Snow fell heavily beyond the giant windows overlooking downtown Chicago. There was only one bed. He froze. Evelyn noticed immediately. "You can take the couch." Relief flooded him. "Thank you. Unless you snore." "I don't." "Good." For the next hour, silence filled the room except for the distant howl of winter wind against the glass. Daniel answered emails from the couch while Evelyn worked at the dining table, typing with ruthless speed. Neither spoke much, until her phone rang. Daniel didn't mean to overhear, but the moment Evelyn answered, something changed in her voice. Not cold, not sharp, small. "Is she awake?" she whispered. A pause, then another whisper. "Did she ask for me again?" Daniel slowly looked up. Evelyn turned away toward the window. "Yes," she said quietly. "Tell her I'll come tomorrow if the road's clear." Another pause. Then her shoulders stiffened. "No," she said, voice trembling for the first time. "Don't let her think I abandoned her." The call ended. The room became painfully silent. Daniel immediately looked back down at his laptop, pretending he heard nothing. But a few seconds later, Evelyn spoke. "My daughter hates hospitals." He looked up carefully. She still faced the snow-covered window. Daniel had worked under Evelyn for almost 3 years. He hadn't even known she had a daughter. "She's sick?" he asked softly. Evelyn laughed once. It wasn't a happy sound. "She has leukemia." The words hit like ice water. Daniel didn't know what to say. "She's 8, Evelyn continued, "and she thinks I'm choosing work over her." Her voice cracked on the last word. That shocked him more than anything, because people feared Evelyn Carter, but suddenly she just sounded tired, exhausted in the kind of way sleep couldn't fix. "I'm sorry," Daniel said quietly. "She was diagnosed 2 years ago." Evelyn wrapped her arms around herself tightly. "After my husband died." Daniel's chest tightened. "She lost both parents at once," Evelyn whispered. "One to death, one to work." "No," Daniel said immediately. She turned toward him, surprised. "You're fighting for her." "I missed her last school play." That doesn't mean she doubts your love. I missed her birthday, too. Daniel hesitated before speaking. My mom worked 3 jobs when I was growing up. Evelyn stayed silent. I barely saw her, he admitted. But I never questioned why she was gone. He smiled faintly. I only remembered that every time she came home exhausted, she still asked how my day was. Something in Evelyn's expression softened. She still asks about your day? She asked. Every single night. For the first time ever, Evelyn Carter smiled at him. It was small, fragile, and heartbreakingly beautiful. Hours passed after that. The storm worsened outside, covering the city in white silence. Somewhere around 2 a.m., Daniel woke to a quiet sound. Crying. He sat up immediately. Evelyn was seated on the floor beside the window, knees pulled to her chest, phone clutched tightly in her hand. Daniel hesitated. Then he walked over slowly and sat beside her without speaking. For a long moment, neither moved. She asked the nurse if I still loved her, Evelyn whispered. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Oh, I built an empire, she said shakily, and my daughter thinks she comes second. You know what kids remember most? She looked at him. The people who stayed when things got hard. A tear slid down Evelyn's face. I don't know how to do this. Yes, you do. How? Because you're terrified. She frowned slightly. What? Bad parents don't lie awake wondering if they're failing. Silence filled the room. Then, unexpectedly, Evelyn leaned against him. Just slightly, as if she no longer had the strength to carry everything alone. Daniel stayed perfectly still. Not because he was uncomfortable, because he understood that this moment had nothing to do with romance. It was grief, fear, loneliness, and trust. So he simply sat there beside her, while snow covered the sleeping city beyond the glass. By morning, the storm had finally eased. Daniel woke on the couch to the smell of coffee. Evelyn stood near the kitchen counter holding 2 cups. You take cream, right? He blinked. How do you know that? You survive entirely on cheap office coffee. I pay attention. He laughed softly as he accepted the mug. For the first time, the distance between CEO and employee felt strangely gone. Human. Real. Then Evelyn's phone rang again. Her expression immediately changed. Fear. She answered quickly. What happened? Daniel watched her face drain of color. I'm coming now. The call ended. She crashed overnight, Evelyn whispered. Within minutes, they were racing through icy Chicago streets in a taxi. Evelyn's hands trembled the entire ride. Daniel quietly removed his coat and placed it around her shoulders when he noticed. She was freezing. She looked at him, stunned. You'll be cold. I'll survive. Her eyes glistened. When they arrived at the hospital, Evelyn nearly ran through the halls. Daniel followed a few steps, behind until they reached a small room filled with machines and soft beeping sounds. A tiny little girl lay asleep in the bed, pale, fragile. Evelyn immediately rushed to her side and took her hand. I'm here, baby, she whispered brokenly. Mommy's here. The little girl's eyes slowly opened. Mama? Yes. You came. Evelyn burst into tears, and Daniel quietly looked away, giving them privacy. But then the little girl noticed him. Who's that? Evelyn wiped her face quickly. That's Daniel. The girl studied him carefully. He looks kind. Daniel smiled gently. I try. The little girl gave a weak nod before looking back at her mother. You smiled, she whispered. Evelyn froze. What? I forgot what your smile looked like. The room went silent. Daniel saw Evelyn completely break then. Not loudly, not dramatically, just silently, painfully. As if those words reached every wound she'd been hiding for years. She kissed her daughter's forehead over and over. And in that moment, titles stopped mattering. Money stopped mattering. The powerful CEO disappeared completely. There was only a mother trying desperately to love her child the best way. She knew how. Weeks later, employees across Vail and Mercer noticed something strange. Evelyn Carter had changed. She still demanded excellence, still worked harder than everyone else. But now she smiled at receptionists, remembered birthdays, asked exhausted interns if they'd eaten lunch, and every evening at exactly 6 o'clock, she left the office. No exceptions. One snowy Friday, Daniel found a handwritten note on his desk. Thank you for reminding me what success actually means. Evelyn. Attached was a photo, Evelyn and her daughter, both smiling brightly in a hospital garden, and standing awkwardly in the background holding hot chocolates, was Daniel